Good morning to the room. We're going to get started in just a minute, so encourage folks to come on in. You can chat, we'll just a minute or two before we go, getting ready for a live stream and all that as folks are trickling. Good job being here at 9:15, Calvary. Way to be here. I'm going to get the wave from Robin about being online and get us started in just a moment. What's that? I know, you guys were ready, so good. Well, good morning. My name is Catherine Bush. I'm part of the clergy team here at Calvary Church, and we are delighted to welcome those of you who are here in the room and those of you who are watching maybe at home because of the rain or whatever else wisely you are choosing to be joining us virtually. And particularly honored this morning to be welcoming into our midst newly elected Mayor Paul Young, who is 1 month and a couple of days into his term in office, and we're really honored that he is sharing the morning in conversation with us. In conversation with him is our parishioner, Anna McQuiston. She also happens to be my sister, who worked on Paul's campaign, and she has a particular insight, and their conversation, I think, will feel like two friends who are talking, which will give us a way of entering into relationship and dialogue this morning as well. They're going to talk some. She's got some questions for him. And then at a certain point, we'll open up to the conversation. We'll open the conversation up to those of you who are in the room. So if you've got a question, tuck that in mind and know that we'll hopefully have an opportunity to do a little bit of that toward the end of the hour. It's great to be here with all of y'all, and I'm delighted to welcome Mayor Paul Young and Anna McQuiston.
Good morning. Thanks so much for asking me to do this. It really is. I think this is the first time I've gotten to do this since you've started, so I'm very honored to sit next to the mayor and not just the mayor-elect at this point. And it really is an honor to me as a citizen of Memphis to have Paul serve as our mayor, but even more than that, it is really a privilege for me to call him a friend as well, so this is a true treat for me. I got asked the other day, in terms of an introduction here, which I was asked to do, I'm not going to go through his resume. Hopefully most of you are aware of that already from paying attention to the campaign and that sort of thing, but somebody did ask me the other day, we'll say a lot of times, oh, it's so different having a city planner in the mayor's office. And someone said, explain to me what that means. I don't understand why would that matter? And to me, I think the answer is what has been exhibited via Paul through our friendship and our working together for over 10 years now, is that I think when you approach the job with a city planner, you approach it as a system. And that when you recognize that when you put a parking lot this way instead of this way, it affects how people feel about their city and how people act and how people treat each other in that. And vice versa, that as we start acting out ways that we need to create space that helps do that. And I think this crowd, Paul, is especially attuned to that because they've just been going through a capital campaign to create changes in the space here and recognizing how our space here can impact how we interact as a congregation. So think about that approach when Paul's thinking about how he approaches things as a mayor, which I think brings a really unique aspect to that. So that's my introduction to it.
I like it.
So let's just start and get it out of the way, right? Okay, so let's talk about crime.
All right.
Yeah, because that's what what a lot of people want to hear about. So on the campaign trail, you talked a lot about a dual approach, both suppression and prevention. So can you tell us, now that you've won and you're in the office, your thoughts on that and how you're working to move the needle?
Yeah, now that I'm in the seat, I feel even stronger that what I talked about during the campaign trail was the right approach and is the right approach. And what I would often say is that we must understand the both and, that it's both and. You have some groups that will come and say, well, you're missing the point. You got to focus on the prevention. You have to get to the people before they commit the crimes. Agreed. And then you have others that say, hey, we're in a crisis, we're bleeding, you got to stabilize the patient. We have to figure out how to stop crime right now, and we need to be doing the immediate things. I agree. And so the question is, how do we, as local government, prioritize both? And so, what I've been doing in my early days having a lot of conversations with Chief Davis and her team about strategies that they can implement right now that are going to identify the ones that are wreaking the most havoc in our community. Because the reality is, and I know it doesn't always feel like this, but the reality is there's a small amount of people that are defining our city. There's a small amount of people that are out here doing violent crimes. And if we can get them off the streets, and this is just not me saying this, this is the strategy that other cities have taken. You get the most violent individuals off the streets, you will see a reduction in crime. And my focus has also been, how do we set up the systems? There are already a number of entities that are working very hard to help prevent young people from going down the wrong path and also intervene if we know they're headed down the wrong path. Youth villages, our Boys and Girls Clubs, our Block Squad 901 that works with the city. All of these groups are already working with some of these folks that are headed down the wrong path. They just need more resources to touch more people. And so what we're working to do is the both and strategy. And I believe that you will see results as a result.
Thanks. So, Chief Davis, so talk to us about why, I mean, I've heard you say this, and not necessarily in the forums you've been in, given the opportunity to explain it. Right. What is it that you've learned about Chief Davis as if you've gotten to know her that you believe she will be able to operate differently under your leadership than in the past? Well,
you know, when it came to the decision around Chief Davis, there's a lot of people that have a lot of opinions, and I respect all of them. But I was elected on October 5th, and since that time, I began talking to Chief Davis, meeting with all of the top leadership at Memphis Police Department to begin this work. And there's a couple of reasons that I was really passionate about making sure that she was here to help implement. One, I believe in her. I think that she's incredibly sharp, she's intelligent, she knows this job, and she is nationally acclaimed. When you go in the police chief circles around the country, she is one of the sought after police chiefs for her knowledge and insight on different issues. Number two, we have to get to work now. That urgency that we talked about, I don't have time to have a search for a police chief. That's just a distraction. We need to get to work and start implementing the things. And if things aren't working out, we can always change. But as a new CEO of a corporation that has 6,700 employees, it makes sense to take time and analyze how your leadership is doing their job. Number three, we are under DOJ investigation. We have lawsuits. We have a lot of stuff that's happening right now that I would like for the person that has the knowledge and insight on those issues to be there as we see those things through. And so I thought it was really important for us to give her an opportunity to rise to the occasion. And then the last thing, under new leadership, because she's never worked under my leadership before. And that's nothing against the prior administration. That's just saying, as we chart a new path, it's important for me to give them an opportunity to rise to the occasion.
Last week, the media was reporting about how you stood next to state leadership, and then as they announced that amendment about the bail. And I know that also has some controversial opinions on it as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about that amendment and what you see in it?
Yeah, so the amendment essentially codifies the judges having the discretion to deny bail under certain violent crimes. There are some nuances in the bill that I think we definitely want to work out, but the reason I was willing to do it was one, because these are state leaders that are working to build relationships with the city, and as mayor, they were coming into our city. I wanted to make sure that I was there to talk about the things that are important to me as mayor, as the chief executive of our city. And so I didn't focus so much on the bill because I knew I was going to have an opportunity to give insight. My focus is on partnership, because at the end of the day, whether we agree or disagree on Republican, Democrat, and all the different issues that are going to come our way, I need resources to flow to the people of Memphis. That's the most important thing for me. I'm not so much concerned about my political future and who gets mad who I'm standing next to. My concern is, are these babies gonna get the money that they need to be able to eat? And so I know that sounds like we were standing there talking about bail reform, but I'm not thinking about the bill. I'm thinking about resources for our city. And so as mayor, I want to be a partner, and when things happen at the state level that we don't like, that doesn't mean I don't advocate or have the conversations to try to advocate for our people, but I'm always going to be someone that believes in diplomacy and working with people. And you'll see me stand next to Democrats, Republicans, and others when they are standing for things that I believe are going to benefit our city.
So you alluded to it. Not a politician.
Yes.
Certainly don't have the resume that a lot of. How do you see that as an asset in the job?
I think it's an asset because I have the freedom to go with my heart. Mayor Strickland gave me some advice right after I won that I really, really have taken to heart. And he just wrote it on a sheet of paper. He said, do it your way. And then he further explained that you're going to get a lot of advice, solicited and unsolicited. But at the end of the day, you have to go with what you believe in your heart, because then you have no regrets, however it plays out. And I think me coming from the position that I come from, and not being one that is necessarily seeking to be a lifetime politician, I think it gives me a certain amount of freedom. I mean, I'm definitely going to work to be reelected in 4 years, but I'm not looking to be governor or senator. Like, for me, this is the pinnacle of community development, which is really where my heart lies. I'm a city planner, and I got into city planning because I want to help rebuild neighborhoods throughout this city. And the mayor's office is the pinnacle of that. And so this is the only elected office I want. Now, God may say something different in 7, 8 years, but right now, my focus is advance this city, and I think it gives me the freedom to do that, not having the political baggage that some others might.
There's some people that may try and encourage you to do something different in 4 or 8 years, whatever it is, as well, too. So I just read this. So recently, I don't know if all of you read MLK 50's works, but Tamika Hart recently wrote a piece, and I'm going to quote her because that's easier than me trying to say all this. Tamika wrote, "Since his campaign in the October 2023 election as the 65th mayor of Memphis, Paul Young has boldly celebrated Memphis's blackness as an asset and vehicle for growth. Before him, I had never heard a mayor, or any other elected official for that matter, clearly articulate an understanding of this opportunity and their assignment and power to act on it as leaders of this city." So tell me about what that means to you and to Memphis.
Yeah, so I've been pretty adamant about being consistent. You know this because we had an opportunity to see me early in the campaign trail. I wanted to make sure that I give the same message in every room. Like, whether I'm in South Memphis, North Memphis, East Memphis, Central Gardens, same message, because I want to be very, very consistent. And I firmly believe that we as a city have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to advance based on our strengths, the assets. I'm a city planner, and so I'm going to get to the question, but back when city planning first started, what planners would do is they would come in a neighborhood and they would diagnose your problems and try to tell you how to fix it. Later on, they began to say, we need to take a more asset-based approach. Instead of focusing on the problems, what are our strengths? What are the things in this neighborhood that you can do that others can't necessarily claim? And let's build around these assets as the path towards the future. And when we talk about Memphis, we are the largest black city per capita. That means we have the highest number of African Americans per capita than any major city in this country. So what that means is that's a competitive advantage. Nobody else in the country can say it. Now, you all know, and I know, what the narrative usually is for a city that is predominantly black. Usually the narrative is negative. Usually it's framed around crime. What I'm working to do is frame it around our strengths. What that means is that diversity is our superpower. What that means is that we could be the city that figures out how to grow black wealth. And so our city becomes synonymous with African American entrepreneurs, becomes synonymous with culture, becomes synonymous with the positive attributes of having a high population of African Americans, of having significant diversity. And so when I say it, I'm not trying to exclude anyone. I'm not excluding those that aren't African American. I'm simply saying we have an asset that we have to capitalize on for the sake of our children, for the sake of our future. We got to rebrand Memphis. And part of the branding comes from leaning into strengths like that one.
So what does, I mean, not the most diverse crowd that we're just going to call that out right here, right? So when you look at like, what is a, I'll say this for my own naivete as well too. It's like, what does a agenda to build black wealth look like?
Yeah.
And if you have any, that particularly a room that looks like this can do to help.
Well, I think it's all about economics, quite frankly. And historically, people do business with who they know. Nothing wrong with it. That's just what you do. You do business with who you know. And what has happened historically, because of, I always go back to the way we develop and grow as cities, is in many core city African American communities, not just in Memphis, but all across the nation, the wealth has been extracted. What do I mean? You think about how Memphis has grown. In 1980, we had 620,000 people. We were 200 square miles. We said we want to grow. So we grew further east, built an 18-mile sewer extension. That sewer extension led to the growth of areas like Cordova, Hickory Hill, and others. And what you saw was not just white flight, which is what we saw in the 60s and 70s. We saw economic flight. So even black folks with means left, and they went to the further flung areas of the city. The businesses left and went with them because they chased households, they chased income. And so what it left is a void in the core city African American communities. This has happened all over the country. And so when I look at this room, what I say, and so you lose not just the wealth, but also social capital. You lose previously you had the janitor living next door to the teacher, next door to the doctor and the lawyer. When you extract the wealth, you have the people with the least means who are living in these communities, and they don't have a friend that they grew up next to that can connect them to a business opportunity. They don't have that social capital. And so what I want this room to do is figure out how can we bring back that social capital to our African American neighborhoods. How do you do business with African American business owners that you might not know? You have to go through extra efforts to find someone that does catering in this space. But we can all do that. We had a data point that said that 1% of the business that's being done all throughout our, billions of dollars that go through our economy, 1% is being done with African American businesses. In a city that is 65% black, we can never overcome these bigger issues that plague us if we don't change that number. And this is not white or black, this is economic. This is the key to our growth as a community. We want to stop crime, let's put some money in some folks' pockets. And that's that long-term game. I know we got to do the short term. If you're terrorizing our community, we want you off the streets. But we can't do the same thing over and over and think we're going to get a different results. Because just locking folks up does not change the game, especially when you got another crew coming right behind them. We got to stop the pipeline. And the way we stop that pipeline is that intervention and ultimately the economics.
Yeah, I heard you say the other day to someone, the best thing to fight crime is jobs.
Yeah, no question.
We've got to give opportunity. So you ran on your campaign on 5 different pillars, and you've been in the office like 32, 33 days, I think we're going on right now. And a lot of that focus has been on the public safety pillar that you ran on. So I'd like to give you an opportunity to tell us about those other pillars. Because I know you've made progress in lots of areas and that kind of thing, just already getting started. So I'll just prompt you and you talk. Jobs and economy.
Jobs and economy, on that one, I will say that what we're doing is really trying to get the infrastructure in place. I talked a lot on the campaign trail about trying to find a way to support small businesses and having potentially this organization that could provide back office functions. So I would always give the example of, you may have a carpenter who's an amazing carpenter, but they're not the best CFO. They're not the best HR manager. And so we have already started the process of talking to some of the organizations that are going to come together and try to provide those back office functions for some of our small businesses. Neighborhood and not neighborhood economic development, I don't know what I call it, neighborhood development. Under that pillar, we are working really hard to pull something together. I don't want to announce it just yet, but we're working really hard to pull something together where you're going to see some immediate changes in some neighborhoods aesthetically. Because part of the challenge in our community is that when things look like they're hopeless, people behave as such. And in many of our communities, everything you visually see appears hopeless. There's no investment. There's blight everywhere. And so we're going to be working with all of our divisions to do some things where we can go into communities and make some immediate changes, just almost like, a 3-4 week injection of resources to try to change how communities physically look, from, trash removal to cleanups to code enforcement and ensuring that owners are doing what they need to do. Our youth, our young people, we have an amazing talent over at our youth services department, Brian Harris. He's already hit the ground running. I think they had, I don't know the number, but they had a whole lot of people that came out to one of the events they did yesterday where they are recruiting young people for summer jobs. We have about 1,500 now. We're looking to grow that over the summer. And then the last pillar is arts and culture. And with arts and culture, what we want to do is make sure that we are leaning into those things that make us strong. And our arts and culture really define who we are. We are looking at bringing on a person who's going to be able to help drive some of those initiatives. And we also have a transition team that's working in each of these pillars that are going to be bringing some more firm recommendations to our administration over the next month or two.
Excellent. No prompt necessary. You went through.
Just had to get going.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talked about when we were on the campaign trail, there was a lot of talk about hope. Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about the role you think hope can play in Memphis, or should play in Memphis's future.
I think hope is at the core of what's going to change our city. What I have noticed, even prior to the campaign trail, what I've noticed is that the spirit of Memphis has seemed to be suppressed. And people have just felt down and out. Even when you go to cocktail parties, dinner, and you meet random people, the first thing they talk about is crime, or it's just the spirits are down, and they tell you stories of negative things that have happened to their friends or family, and it's almost felt like we're stuck in this spiral, and will we ever get out? I mean, that's the feeling that I would take away from my conversations. And what I want people to understand is that we will get out. We will rise. Our community is still amazing. There are more of us that are doing positive things in this community than there are those that are doing negative things. And I think people need to hear it and feel it, even more. And that's what I feel like this campaign, this election represented. It wasn't about me, and it's still not about me. I just happen to be the person that's occupying the seat and bringing the message. But it's about the spirit of our city. That's what we're fighting for. And I think the more we can bring that hope and optimism to our community, the more we're going to see the dial shift in the direction that we want it to go.
So if we were to fast forward 20 years from now, I did this math earlier today, so 20 years from now, and Zoe and Paxton, those are Paul's children, are in their late 20s, and they're talking about the legacy of their dad in the office, and Memphians are talking about, what do you hope that legacy is?
My hope is that we look back at this moment and we say, this is when it happened. This is when we saw the shift. And I often give this quote when I give my speeches that I took from somebody else, where they say that history never feels like history when you're sitting in it. It just feels like another day. It never feels like you're making history when you're making it. It just feels like another day because you're doing what you believe is right. And I believe that we're going to look back at this moment and we're going to say, this is the moment where Memphis took off. Because every few years, every 7, 8 years, there's another city in the South that rises. We've seen Nashville most recently, Atlanta, Charlotte, Dallas, Austin. All these cities have had amazing runs where they were like the it city. And the question is, which city is going to be next? Nashville is starting to level off. I firmly believe that that city is going to be Memphis. It's either Memphis, Birmingham, Jackson, Mississippi, Little Rock. There's no reason that it shouldn't be our city. We just have to set our minds to it and stick to the plan, and I think we will.
So this is my last question, so start getting your questions ready. But so as we think about that vision and all of us, so this is a congregation that is known for its social activism and being engaged citizens. So what are 3 things that we could all go out and do immediately, in the next couple of weeks here that would make a difference towards moving us towards that vision and that reality?
One, the first and easiest thing, I think, is changing the way we talk about our city. You be the bearers of good news. People in your circles are going to have negative things to say. We need you to be the ones that are articulating the positive things happening in our city, because it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And the more we speak positivity, the more positivity will come. 2, continue the amazing work that you all are doing. I should have started with this, but this church is a godsend for so many people. So many people in our community are right here, 7 days a week, getting help and support. And we need you all to continue the amazing work that you're doing there. And then 3, volunteer in one of our communities in some way. Go and read to some kids, work at, Constance Abbey or some of these other places that are doing things for we need your presence. The community needs to feel your presence all throughout this city. And then partner with churches that don't look like yours. Partner with an African American church. We had at my church, the Healing Center, we had a partnership with Second Baptist. And we had worship services together, community service that we did together, and built that social capital, social relationships and networks to connect to people who are from different backgrounds. I think that is really, really important for the social fabric of our community.
I lied. I'm going to ask one more question.
Okay.
So, because you talked about this some, so what, as we sit here in a community of faith, so what is the role of you? There's a statistic you used about how much the communities of faith play in our.
Yeah, I mean, last number I heard, there were 2,000 churches in our community. 2,000 churches in the city of Memphis. And I firmly believe that we have to develop a systems approach where we are connecting each church to those zip codes in their communities. We're finding ways to get resources to these churches so that they can be a part of the solution. Often when I talk about youth and education, inevitably somebody will ask, well, city, you should be putting money into education. And my response is that I believe the city should be putting money into our young people, whether it's through the school system or otherwise. It needs to go to the young people, because 60% of the factors that drive educational outcomes happen outside of the classroom. Knowing that, I want to find a way to provide resources to the entities and organizations that are going to engage those young people. And I firmly believe that our churches should be a part of that equation, because once they walk out of that school building, they're going into a world, into a community. Some of them are going into places that don't nurture them. And if we can open up the doors of the churches, that can be another, 3 or 4 hours of the day that those young people are engaged.
So, wow, lots of y'all got here when I turned around. So we're going to open it up to a few questions from the community. Remember, if you've got a street light out, there's a way to register that, so maybe that's not the question for Mayor Young today. But if you've got something that you want to hear about, more on a topic that's been addressed, yeah.
Just talked about schools. I work in the schools. I have 2 little children. I work in Whitehaven, Hickory Hill, Binghamton, and that's it. Those are 3 neighborhoods. Churches, I think, are a huge part of neighborhoods. I love that you keep talking about neighborhoods. Schools are also such a big part of neighborhoods. What can we do? Because something I see as a parent and as a person that works in the schools is people in Memphis fleeing the schools in their neighborhoods. Yeah. What can we do to reignite the pride in our schools? Because I think if we have pride in our neighborhood schools, then the parents get more involved, and then, like you said, that 60% we get. So what can we do, me as a person in the schools, me as a parent, what can we do to increase that engagement in our neighborhood schools? Because I think that's so important.
Yeah, I 100% agree. In fact, that was why when my alma mater, East High School, when they were doing some changes a couple of years ago, that was some of the feedback that I gave them, was ensure that they continue to allow community residents to have a preference to be in the school as they were making those transitions, because the schools are the magnets for communities. And I think one way that we can strengthen our neighborhood schools is by having special emphasis in each school. For instance, East High has a focus on airplane mechanics and aerospace stuff, engineering, a lot of stuff like that. And it makes it a destination. I believe that we need to identify what is going to be the focus for each of our neighborhood schools so that it gives more emphasis, more reason for people to want to be there. And I don't know what those things are. Maybe in at Raleigh, Egypt, they're focused on some other STEM issue. Nursing may be one that another school focuses on. I think you have to identify what is going to be the carrot for each school to make sure that it is having a stronger curriculum. I also think that enhancing walkability, enhancing parental engagement. I think one sign of a strong school is always how engaged the parents are. And so finding ways to build that community amongst the parents, understanding that in many of our communities, our parents are overworked and they aren't able to come and participate in after-school programs. So we have to be thoughtful about how that engagement takes place. But I think that is going to be key towards getting those neighborhood schools back.
Mayor Young, I'm Christine Todd, and very thankful you're here with us at Calvary. I am fortunate enough to work with outreach here, and we appreciate so much that you come from city planning, because that's absolutely it. Housing is the issue that I am very much concerned about. And the other, your jobs, I worry about our buses. MATA needs money. There is no way people can get to work 7 to 3, 3 to 11, or 11 to 7 the way the buses run now. And we've got to get our buses going. Do we have any plans?
Yeah. So housing and MATA. Housing, I mean, that's probably the thing that I know best. It's ironic because I don't talk about it as much as I used to. But housing is something that's going to continue to be important. I want to find ways to be creative around how we fund getting people into quality housing spaces. And for many, many years, well, I'll just share also, I had my own deficits when it came to thinking about housing when I started my job as the director of housing in 2016. I would think of those individuals that are experiencing homeless as kind of this part of the work. And then I have affordable housing over here. And, you know, we're working to build and work with nonprofit developers and all those things. And I wasn't really making the connection. But somewhere along the way, and I think it was probably talking to Pat and others, but somewhere along the way, what I realized is that what we really need when it comes to housing is a continuum. We need to understand where people are along this continuum, and we need housing opportunities available at each point. There's going to be some points where you are experiencing homelessness and you are in a space where you need a shelter for temporary, short-term stability. And then we want to move you from that point into long-term stability, whether that's purchasing a home or renting a home. And for each person, it's going to take different interventions. You need, some of them have substance abuse issues, and we have to deal with those. Some of them are just down on their luck, and they just need an injection of capital for a short period of time. And so what I think about now when it comes to housing is how do we strengthen the continuum and the connectivity of the organizations that are supporting people along that path. When it comes to MATA, what I believe is that we need to be thinking about how we innovate around transit, because we have large buses that are moving significant amounts of air. I mean, this is large buses that are moving significant amounts of air. And then when I have, and this is early, and when I've had conversations around it, you know, what I hear is that we have a fleet that is in a severe state of disrepair, that it costs about $850,000 per bus. But that's those big buses that are moving down the streets. And so we need to think about how we shrink the bus size so that it's more nimble, that it can cost less. I mean, we shouldn't just buy the big buses because that's what we've been buying. We got to think differently. We got to use programs like what we're doing downtown with Groove on Demand, and there's a program called Ready in Westwood, and both are the same, where they use these vans, and you can call up the van on your app, and it's $1.50, and it takes you anywhere within a geography. Those are ways for us to be innovative around how we're getting people to and from services. And with Groove on Demand, what I thought was going to be the most used route was going to be people going from office buildings to lunch. Turns out the most used route is individuals coming from Klondike, Smoky City area to the grocery store at Poplar and Cleveland. So they're actually using it to get to daily services and needs. Those are things that we've already started, but we got to figure out how do we expand it so that we can be smarter around how we do transit in this community. And that's the direction that we're going to head. Thank you.
Good morning. Mayor, I have a question about partnerships. You talked a little bit about that, but you know, city government can only do so much alone. Your office can only do so much alone. You know, you've talked a little bit about the private community, the faith-based community, other government entities. Can you talk about the partnerships that are your priority to cultivate, and what you're hoping to achieve by that?
Yeah. So Most of the things that I'm talking about, I believe, have to be done through partnership. I don't believe the city of Memphis should be trying to get into new lines of business. We need to figure out who are the organizations that are already doing the work and how can we partner with them to help them scale. I also think about, particularly around public safety, who are the organizations or individuals that are already doing the work for free? There are people that are out here in our communities that are doing amazing work every day. And what we as city government need to be focused on doing is figuring out how do we uncover that work and support it even more so that they can do more. We have so many organizations that are doing the things that we need to see done in this community. It just needs to be done at a higher scale. So for me, partnerships is at the core of all of the things that I'm talking about. And from a city perspective, we want to be able to provide funding, ensure that we're getting outcomes and tracking results, which I know sometimes becomes a challenge, but we want to make sure that we're getting that. And then we want to see our nonprofit and for-profit partners be able to step up to help us get these things done. Oh, yes. So one of the roles that I firmly believe the mayor plays in our city is being the chief convener for all. The chief convener. There's a lot of power in the seat to bring people together. And so as we come up with ideas, programs, I want to make sure that they're not siloed. One of the things that I would often talk about around public safety is, we have so many different parts of the system that influence where we're going to go. My goal is to make sure that I'm bringing us all together, that we're singing from the same hymn book. Because once we're doing that, there's so much more power. When the community knows that people are just at the table talking, there's so much more trust and faith that comes from just that visual. And so that's part of, what I really want to be part of our DNA in city government.
I was deliriously happy when you won.
Thank you.
I want you to understand, I know you haven't been to your first national meeting of city. Here I am. I'm 85, cut me some slack. But the National Council of Mayors has taken on homelessness as their top priority. And a bunch of women mayors are pretty much leading this, particularly one out in Las Vegas. And so you're going to have lots of help there. But when you're talking about the housing that we need, I never had in 40 years have one homeless person ask me for a place to live, a place to stay for a little while till I can move on. So if we're not looking at those pieces of that, and we're doing a really, really remarkable job with keeping homeless people off the street. We have wonderful programs out there. But the reality is there are still too many coming in and flowing through. So everything you can do to push on that, housing, community development, I love you.
Thank you so much. I love you too. Thank you for those remarks.
Good morning. My name's Ashley Baker, and when you spoke about this city and your plans for us to be the next best city and your passion for it, it was incredibly sincere. I don't look like most of the people that make the majority of this city up. I did graduate with your wife from White Station, by the way.
Nice.
But I do get really tired of feeling like, am I the only person that says I love this place? My kids go to Snowden. I'm the PTO president. I run my mouth about loving this school district, loving this city. And this is just an idea, but I was teary when you said what you said. So, what marketing campaigns, what website, what are you going to do to I don't want just these people to hear what you said.
Yeah.
I need so many more. So
Yeah.
please somehow say that loudly. Thank you.
So we definitely have a full-fledged strategy on how we're going to communicate and rebrand our city. And it involves not just websites, but strategic dialogues, interviews, placements of conversation. We want to impact the psyche of how people think about our city. And so we're being really thoughtful about how we're going about it. So I think you'll be pleased over the next few months. I think I saw Meg Crosby somewhere in here. Meg, there you go. So I just want to shout out Meg because Meg is helping to lead our transition team. I mentioned all of the different groups that are working to bring plans together over the next few months, and Meg has been amazing in helping us lead. She also helped to coordinate the selections and interviews of many of the people that are serving on the team. We have an incredible group of committed individuals that are working in the administration, and I firmly believe you're going to see the results. It's going to take a little bit of time, but we're not sitting on our laurels. We are jumping in right now.
This is pretty specific, but, well, two specifics. What's going on with our neighbor over here? And then, but the one I really want to ask about is that I'm a big fan of the Blue Suede Brigade. When I rock to Rhapsodies or Maciel's and somebody simply looks me in the eye and says hello, that represents the city, I feel seen and safer and more welcome. And some things that seem to be in conflict are not in conflict in that. Is there any desire or talk about expanding the way that we just have folks in our city just paying attention, greeting, welcoming people in that whole conversation?
Yeah, that's great point. And with Blue Suede Brigade, I'll speak to that then, 100 North Main. There is dialogue now around how do we significantly increase the number of Blue Suede Brigade team members. And we're talking to some of the private businesses in downtown about that. And so over the next 2 months or so, you'll see some movement on that. But the whole premise behind the Blue Suede Brigade, and these are the individuals with the blue shirts that walk around throughout downtown, the whole premise is that they serve a hospitality and safety function. They're there to make people feel comfortable, and if you're lost and don't know where the Civil Rights Museum they'll point you in the right direction. But they also are there if some negative things are happening, they'll help get the police officers there. They're working with our brothers and sisters that are experiencing homelessness and directing them to resources. And so they're a very, very valuable asset to downtown. And so getting more of them is going to be a tremendously positive thing for downtown. One of the biggest challenges we have in downtown, as great as things have been, is blight. I mean, dormant buildings. And 100 North Main is one of the more prominent